One of the quieter effects of narcissistic abuse is that many survivors stop checking themselves first. Not because they become disconnected from themselves completely, and not because they suddenly stop having instincts, reactions, or internal signals, but because the environment gradually becomes more important to monitor than their own internal experience. You may notice this afterward in very ordinary moments. You walk into a room and immediately assess the mood before noticing your own. You monitor tone before checking how you feel. You scan for tension, disapproval, withdrawal, disappointment, or emotional shifts before deciding what is safe to say, safe to ask, or safe to need. And after a while, that pattern can become so automatic that it no longer feels like adaptation. It just feels like how you operate. Many survivors do not realize how much of their attention became organized around the environment instead of themselves. That shift matters. Because when environmental monitoring becomes primary, internal referencing often becomes secondary without you fully noticing it happening. This adaptation usually develops gradually. At first, checking the environment can feel reasonable. You notice patterns. You learn what creates tension. You learn what reduces conflict. You learn which reactions lead to disconnection, unpredictability, or emotional consequence. And over time, your system starts prioritizing anticipation. Not because you are manipulative, not because you are hyper-controlling, but because your nervous system begins organizing around predictability. When the environment becomes emotionally unpredictable enough, monitoring it can start to feel safer than trusting yourself. That is an important distinction, because many survivors later interpret this adaptation as weakness, insecurity, or loss of identity. But the deeper issue is often that attention itself was retrained. Your awareness slowly shifts outward. Instead of asking, "What do I think? What feels true to me? What do I actually want here?" the system becomes more oriented toward what reaction is coming, what needs to be managed, what will keep things stable. And after enough repetition, that orientation can become automatic. This is part of why many survivors feel exhausted, even in relatively calm environments afterward. Because the monitoring pattern often continues long after the relationship ends. You may still find yourself reading expressions quickly, tracking emotional tone automatically, adjusting yourself before fully identifying your own response. The adaptation was never only relational. It became perceptual. The environment started receiving priority access to your attention. And once that happens consistently enough, internal authority can begin weakening quietly in the background. Not all at once, not dramatically. Just gradually enough that external conditions begin carrying more authority than your own internal signal. Over time, some survivors become highly skilled at reading the environment while becoming increasingly unfamiliar with themselves. That can feel confusing afterward, especially because environmental awareness itself is not the problem. Many survivors are extremely perceptive. The issue is not the ability to notice the environment. The issue is when the environment becomes more trusted than your own internal signal. As this becomes clearer, certain patterns can start making more sense. Why it can feel difficult to know what you want immediately. Why you may notice other people before yourself automatically. Why internal clarity sometimes feels delayed until after the environment has already been assessed. Not because you disappeared, but because your attention adapted around external stability for a long time. If you're noticing how automatic environmental monitoring has become for you, I created a 30-day stabilization space as something structured you can step into while you begin holding more awareness of yourself, without needing to force anything before you're ready. The link is in the description below whenever it feels appropriate to explore it. And if you prefer to stay here and continue orienting at your own pace, that is completely valid. Learning to monitor the environment was an adaptation to instability. Your attention adapted around survival. That is different from losing yourself. We'll pause here.